This is The Walking Dead Destinies. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video, subscribing is great as well. So if you're a fan of the earlier episodes of The Walking Dead, or the earlier seasons, this game basically tracks the portion of the experience from waking up in the hospital with Rick to dealing with the whole situation around the prison and or jail that the group eventually gets a hold of, and then it just kind of trails off and ends. So what are we getting here? It's a 4K resolution, 60 FPS. This is literally part of the game where it's got like this weird fade to black all of a sudden out of nowhere. I guess that's to like reset the character and allow you to move. There are some stutters occasionally here or there, but for the most part it does actually run fine, and it does look, well, it kind of gameplay-wise, world-wise, it's something from a few generations of consoles ago, but, like, you know, it does look relatively fine, I guess you would say. There are issues where audio kind of cuts out during cutscenes. Some cutscenes are just straight up kind of like you hear audio, but there's no actual picture. There's some bugs, there's some issues, there are some problems, but you know what? It does actually all work, if that makes sense. Like, the game does, like, you play start to finish, and it does work. It's sort of like Kong, where it sucks, it's terrible, it's an awful game, but, like, it does function at a base level, which is intriguing. They do reuse areas, they do kind of randomly have the continuity just kind of be in question. Like, for instance, what's cool about this game? Okay, let's talk about firstly what's cool about this game. The concept is neat. You're playing or replaying through the Walking Dead show in a really condensed format, but like you're choosing things and the story is different. Like, in one situation, Carl might die really early on, or in another situation, picking one character over another completely changes what happens between those characters. But there's issues with the continuity where basically, like, okay, for instance, I chose for Carl to die, I guess, I didn't really know. And then in the next scene, you got like Shane and Rick fighting, and they're like, Rick's like, I'll take care of my kid Carl and stuff, and then Shane's like, I could take care of Carl too. But like, Carl died in the previous scene, so it's like, he's gone. So it's stuff like that where it's sort of like, it doesn't make sense. And then they've got all these different characters, and they've got like this skill tree. And what's hilarious is there's a bug where if you collect skill points, let's say you gather 15, use them, then you die, load the checkpoint, you'll have the 15 skill points again. Not that skill points really do much or anything at all in this game, but, you know, there's small bonuses. Oh, and the cutscenes are hilarious. They are literally still images here, and sometimes the audio plays over top. Actually, we should see if the audio works. He just puts his hand up. We'll actually see if this... Oh no, there's actually sound playing. That's good, because last time the voice, like the characters weren't actually like talking.
What's that bandage for?
It's working this time, but it wasn't working last time, which is kind of funny. So, yeah, you've got characters from, like, The Walking Dead, but they don't really group up or do much together. They're kind of there, and they're not there, and, oh, wow, how convenient. I just gotta look at the top of this car, and, you know, there's my uniform, and now I look like my signature sheriff. Anyways, it's just kind of funny. Like, the design of this game is kind of hilarious. Because as I said, they like reuse settings, reuse the locations. They've got a big cast of characters, but you don't really like use them, if that makes sense. Like, some characters are not really used at all, and like it really, really heavily leans on the fact that you know about the show. If you have not seen the show or have no context of The Walking Dead, you will be so utterly confused in this game. Like, it literally, story-wise, probably won't make any sense at all. Like, you need a working understanding of this show, otherwise the narrative here is basically just complete gibberish. It's kind of like a greatest hits of The Walking Dead. Now, they have ripped the mechanic from Dead Rising, where the zombies just kind of like get on you and they kind of attack you. And then they're like, the more zombies you get, the more your whole wheel gets like filled, and you'll have like 4 whole things going on. And the zombies, they could be pretty overwhelming. There are different difficulties. Normal was fine. I was a little bit worried that it kept like warning me, and I'm like, oh, that's not a good situation. But like, you know, it's something that took me about 5 hours or so, maybe some players a little bit more. There's like and to replay it, you don't get to pick levels, which is a bit of a bummer. You can basically load the last save of the game, or you can, you know, restart from the beginning, and that's where we are right now. The game also has this absolutely horrible sort of like anger scared system, so your character can go into a panic if they're being, you know, swarmed by walkers, and then from that point forward, like, well, for a little bit, your character is like frantic, and they're like, I can't do anything. Like, you can't roll, you can't attack, or sometimes all you can do is like super hard hits. And sometimes, you know, you also have situations where basically like the game's melee stops working, so you can't melee anything, and you're just kind of like stuck. And it's like tiny linear levels where, again, it really does feel like this game should have come out like when these first seasons of the show kind of came out, and it would have made a lot more sense. Like, it's kind of like, oh, you could do stealth and stuff, but it's like not really stealth, and you just kind of like, you know, you attack things, you move through areas, and sometimes it's overwhelming. It's just like, I don't know, it doesn't sound or maybe look as bad as it really is, but this game is genuinely boring, repetitive, and just tiring to play. Okay, here's the skill tree too. It looks like all that resets every playthrough. But like, yeah, this is genuinely like not a great experience. I would just not recommend playing this at all. Like, it's a bad game. It's a frustrating game at times. It's kind of annoying, and like it kind of seems like there was a bit of potential here, but it feels like a game from like a different era where they're just kind of cashing in on the brand, I guess. And it's just like, sometimes it's kind of funny. Like, at the beginning of the game, I was kind of laughing. I was like, okay, this is humorous. And by the end, I was just like, oh, this needs to just end. I'm like, this is torment. It really is. It's like torture. And like, yeah, again, I really want to come back to the point that like, this is functional. You know what I mean? Like, you can play it start to finish. It works. You know, it hits the beats of The Walking Dead. If for whatever morbid reason you want to dive in here and play this, you can. And it does run. And there's 13 iconic characters here. You meet some of them throughout the story. And yeah, it's just these small kind of linear levels put together. Atlanta, the Greene family farm, the prison, Woodbury, all these moments from AMC's The Walking Dead. But it also is like different from The Walking Dead too, if that makes sense. Like, it does kind of stray off in some story bits here or there, obviously with the big choices you make where you're like, this person lives, this person dies. That kind of stuff is different, if that makes sense. So like, the idea of this is really quite good. Like, I think the concept of re-exploring something, but choosing different setups or paths for how everything kind of plays out, to me, that's kind of intriguing. The end result is just not a great game. Like, it's kind of hard, because I sit there and, like, a lot of my experience for, like, you know, giving thoughts on games is sort of based on the concept of, like, how they sort of, like, function and how they perform, if that makes sense. It's like, how playable is this game? That is the biggest thing. It's like, can you finish this game? Yeah. But then occasionally we get games where they're like this, where it's just like, it's really, really just awful to play. Like, it's not fun, it's repetitive, it's annoying, it's got gameplay mechanics I don't enjoy. And that's kind of what we get into with the state of this one. Is it's just genuinely an awful experience. And as I said, like, it is quite repetitive. Like, you go, like, there's this warehouse, and they reuse it, like, for 6 or 7 levels towards the end of the game. And they just like they keep rehashing the same areas, and the areas aren't very large. I will say there's like a decent amount of detail within them. Oh yeah, and that's funny because the checkpoints usually like actually carry you ahead of where you are. But like, you know, you look here, you're like, okay, I'm in a city, and it's like usually the clouds move. I don't know if they're moving this part. A lot of the levels the clouds actually move, which is usually a prop for me. Maybe they're not working here. Yeah, maybe they're not working. This it's like some of the areas I'm like, you know, kind of like from a standpoint of environment, it's not bad, right? Like, you know, there's lots of cars. Sure, the reflections and stuff look like they're from an old gen, or the backdrop buildings aren't the greatest. But like, it's kind of like an okay looking game. You know what I mean? Like, it could be worse, is what I'm trying to get across. And it's like, yeah, the characters aren't like super visually impressive, but they look like their counterparts, and you know, they've got some voice work to them. Like, there is stuff in here where I'm kind of like, okay, this could be a lot worse. But it's just kind of like the gameplay mechanics, and it really is, I think, a case of like a team sort of contending with like a really small budget, trying to like tie into a property where it is just more of a property cash-in, which is a bit of a shame, because I think if you actually took this concept where you're like doing Destinies and you like applied it to like a bunch of different kind of franchises and mix things up, people actually might find that to be kind of intriguing. You actually might find, you know, kind of value in doing something where basically you're rehashing something, but you're doing it in a fresh way. So I think if I die here, it'll just put me on top of the truck, which is how I did it last time. But like, yeah, like the concept here is not bad. I hate these pushing. Okay, so there's a lot of these objects here where you hold X to push, and they'll put like 6 or 7 boxes in a row, and it sucks. It sucks so much. Sorry, I just like, I really got to talk about the boxes because there's an example here. The box portions suck. But yeah, I like the idea of revisiting this sort of situation where it's like, okay, we jump into the show, how do we change things up? Maybe Myrtle comes with us and T-Dog gets left behind, or maybe we continue and T-Dog comes with us and Myrtle comes and then somebody else gets attacked in a certain situation, or someone else dies here. That is a cool concept that works and makes sense to me. It's just the execution and definitely like the budgeting here just wasn't present to make this actually a comprehensive experience, which is a huge disappointment because the idea could have really worked, but the execution here is very piss poor, and the game itself is just not very good. It's not fun to play, it's very repetitive, there's not a lot of context or really scale to this one. It would have been... Oh, and sometimes the zombies, they just spawn and fall from the sky right around where you're walking. Happens all the time, it's hilarious. But like, you know, there's like just issue after issue after issue. But nothing that makes it so you can't play the game, which I have to continuously go across, because that is one of my main sort of metrics for things, especially for games that are like awful, is usually the fact that you can't like play or finish them, where you can actually do that with this one. They always put these boxes right towards the end just so you can't like escape. Oh, and annoyingly also sometimes your character just like reacts in a weird way without you actually like doing something, like they do an extra hit or something. It's really weird. There's a lot of like really small kind of niche bugs, but functionally you can play it start to finish. So that is something. But that's like the bare minimum. Like I've played like really great games that have like progress bugs and whatnot and stuff, and it's like it's just sort of like a combination of things that come together in this one. And it just sort of makes for a really rather awful kind of experience. Like, it's one of the worst games of the year. I think maybe I've played a couple that are a little bit worse this year, but like, it's really bad. Like, if you're like a Walking Dead fan, I think you might find it like a little insulting and a bit of a cash grab for you, but like, there is stuff I kind of look at where I'm like, you know, it's almost disappointing that they didn't push this further, because it's missed potential that's the biggest thing for me. But yeah, this just really isn't that fun to play. Like, it's really to me, it's kind of unintriguing. You just walk from spot to spot. Later on, you get like, you know, you can have like a gun and you can shoot stuff, and you know, you get to play with the narrative. That aspect of it, I would say, is neat, is you get to play up with the narrative. But like, do you really care that much? Like, are you really prepared to just sort of like the tank is missing? This is funny too, because like the tank is clearly here, but like the tank is missing. And it's just, to me, it's like, it's a lack of polish and just something that really does. As I said, if this came out like right around, would have been, I think, the 360 era or something like that. Like, if this would have come out right off of the ending of, or around the time of like the actual show getting to the part where they're heading out to, like, I think it's called Terminus or something. Like, that might have been, like, it would have been a good tie, and I'd be like, okay, for the time, kind of an interesting game. Probably wouldn't be playing it today because of The Walking Dead. Oh, when it gets dark like this, I can't see anything. It pisses me off so much. Like, literally, this whole screen is dark, and you can't see anything when you're panicked. And you can't, like, attack, and it's so obnoxiously annoying. It drives me crazy. So much of this game drives me crazy. Like, I'm trying to be, you know, kind of sitting here an objective of being like, it doesn't work, and blah, blah, blah. But I'm really hoping that it's not getting across as, oh, this is something that would be interesting to play. No, it's terrible. Like, this is a horrible experience. And there's so many parts of it that are just, like, utterly, absolutely frustrating, where I'm just like, oh, this is terrible. And if it would have come out, like, gens ago, that, too, is the point I keep going towards making. It's like, if this came around generations of gaming ago, this wouldn't be so bad. But, like, in the modern era, you've got so many interesting games, and it's just, like, the lazy tie-ins. I like properties that tie into, like, shows and movies. I find them kind of interesting. You know what I mean? Like, I find them kind of intriguing. Like, you get some real mixes. So this is time where we could be like, oh, let's take Merle with us. And then how do they get up to, like, to this area? It's just kind of like, I guess there's a ladder, but how did Glenn get over? It doesn't even matter. You just gotta, as I said, you just kind of gotta go with it. You just gotta follow the story, and you just gotta, like, have a working knowledge of the Walking Dead show. Or otherwise, like, I'd love to see someone that actually has no idea what the Walking Dead is kind of play through this, or, like, watch something through this and try to, like, get an understanding of the show, because I feel like you miss so much to the point that you're just kind of, like, skipping along a greatest hits thing, and it's just bizarre. Like, this whole game is just weird. Movie tie-in games, they have the potential to be horrible, but they have the potential to be, like, really great. And just this one is not very good. It sadly is not. Oh yeah, and then the weird crouching from your characters, like the knees and stuff. It's so weird. This is where I discovered the bug too, where you just pick up this, like, skill points and you can, like, reset the area over and over and over again. Ugh, just gets frustrating. Most of your gameplay is with guns, though, like, honestly. It's just the opening here, you just use melee stuff, and then you just get tons of guns. You've got, like, assault rifles and snipers and shotguns. And some of the, like, special infected, the big fat ones, take, like, ridiculous amount of shots to them. And, like, you can tell, it's like, you know, they kind of tried with this one, honestly. There's situations where I'm kind of like, you can see that the developers tried, and it's like a very indie, stretched out kind of to a over level that they could have never achieved kind of experience. Or maybe with, you know, more dev time, they could have. I'm kind of, at times, kind of finding these properties to be intriguing to, like, play and stream and have a laugh. But, like, this one really, really just continued to get more and more excruciatingly painful to sit through as the story progressed. I was just like, I really genuinely want this to end. Like, these gameplay mechanics, they just ripped, like, the part of Dead Rising, and it's just, like, got so exhausting to play, and it's just like, by the end of it, I was like, this is a nightmare. It really was. Like, this is not a great game. And sure, maybe if you're a diehard Walking Dead fan, there could perhaps be, like, a point where, a price point or something, where this is, like, intriguing to you, or you might just like it because you like the show and you want to change up the story. But I feel like you could just imagine that yourself without having to get this and go through this process. So it's not terribly long, it's not terribly expansive, but there was some things here where they tried, they just didn't hit the mark, and it's just kind of awful.